Death toll due to extreme weather rises to 208. 92 remain missing. The tragic story of 3 families who lost their loved ones in Pahiyangala. Former senior DIG Anurasena Nayaka released on bail. Traffic OIC of the Boralla police remanded for allegedly being involved in the robbery of gold jewellery. What's causing the mass death of fish in Mullaitivu? A very good evening to you and welcome to Primetime News, coming to you live and direct from the News First studios here in Colombo. I'm Krishan Devasagayam.
And I'm Azra Hassan. Here's a look at the stories in detail. 1 week on and the death toll due to the extreme weather condition in the country has risen to 208. 92 people still remain missing. Tonight, we hear one mother's harrowing story.
The collapse of the Mahapalakhanda in the Bogahawat area in Bulat Sinhala claimed the lives of 10 persons living in 3 houses located at the foot of the mountain.
සද්ද ඇහුණා මේ අර මඩුවේ සීට් කැඩෙන සද්ද තමයි ඇහිලා දෙන්නේ. මං හිතුවා රයිස් කැට වගේ යෝද කුට්ටි වැටෙනවා හරි මොකක් හරි වෙන්නේ. ජනේලේ ඇරලා බලන්න කියලා හැදුවේ. ජනේලේ අරින්න හම්බුන්නේ මේ අර මේ කෑලි මගේ ඇඟ උඩට වැටුණා. ඒ වැටුණා එකම මං පුතාලා දෙන්නට කතා කරේ. පුතාලා දෙන්නෙන් කවුරක්වත් කතා කරේ නෑ මේ පුතේ කිව්වට.
This mother lost her 2 children in this tragic incident. According to area residents, the landslide claimed the lives of 5 innocent children. It has been 7 days since tragedy struck. The survivors of this tragedy engaged in religious observances in remembrance of their loved ones.
In more weather-related news now, 2 children who were trapped in a house that was buried in a landslide in the Mathugama area were rescued by area residents today. This landslide was caused after the Mathugama-Thennihina road was inundated. Several homes were affected by the landslide. Three children were buried in one house, however they were saved thanks to the efforts of area residents.
කොළු තිබුණේ මේක ෂීට් දාලා මේ මාස 3ක් නෑ තාත්තට තියෙන අපේ අර මේ අපේ එකේ කෑල්ලක් අර උඩ තිබ්බ කෑල්ලක් අර තියෙන කිලෝ කරලා නිතරම මේ උළු බින්දන හින්දා කියලා එකක් තියෙනවා මාරුවෙන් ණයට ලෝන් එකක් ගාලා තමයි තිබ්බේ කොහාගේ සෙල්ලම්
Newsfirst reporters travelled to several areas that were affected by landslides and areas in which flood waters are receding. We were able to witness the public attempting to resume their livelihoods which were affected by the extreme weather. These are the visuals gathered by Newsfirst reporters who travelled to areas such as Hiniduma, Pavalama and Udugama in the Galle district which were affected by flooding. The Mallika College in Hiniduma, which was inundated, is not in a situation where it can be open for activities once again next week.
Due to the existing situation, the school buildings are at risk. The roofs have collapsed. Muddy water has flown in. There is a definite risk of diseases spreading in the area. We are making efforts. I don't believe we can recommence activities at this school by even Monday.
මොනතරම් අපි උත්සාහ ගන්නවා නමුත් මම හිතනවා කිසිසේත්ම සම්පතට මේ පාසල පටන් ගන්න ලැබෙන එකක් නැහැ කියලා.
Restoration work on the section of the Vidyaraja Primary School in Tavalama, which was affected by a landslide, is yet to begin. Our reporters in the Mapalagama area noted that the Mapalagama Madhya Vidyalaya is not in a state which is capable of commencing educational activities next week.
In a weather advisory released this evening, the Met Department predicts more showers will develop in the southwestern parts of the island.
Showers or thunder showers are predicted in the western, Sabragamur, southern, central, Uva, north central and northwestern provinces. The Met Department says that fairly strong winds exceeding 50 kilometers per hour can be expected during showers, and the general public is requested to take adequate precautions to minimize accidents caused by lightning. The northern shores of Sri Lanka have experienced unusual marine phenomenon. On Wednesday, a pod of whales beached in Sampur, Trincomalee, and in the early hours of this morning, hundreds of thousands of dead fish were seen floating along the shoreline in the seas of Mullaitivu. Are the two events just a coincidence, or is there a connection?
The National Aquatic Resources Research and Development Agency are still testing the dead fish. However, we spoke to marine biologist Daniel Fernando for some insight on what could possibly be the causes of this marine activity. Is there any reason for like a large amount of fish to all of a sudden surface dead?
Well, it's not something that happens very often. We have seen occurrences of similar events in other parts of the world. Unfortunately, without getting more information on what actually took place in Sri Lanka, it's difficult for us to say for sure what the reasons could be. But potential reasons that have resulted in similar events in other parts of the world include primarily harmful algal blooms, and this is basically when an excess amount of nutrients is in the water, which could either be due to excess rainfall, which has resulted in a lot of fresh water entering the system, and these excess nutrients then result in a bloom of algae, and this algae can sometimes produce harmful toxins which could directly kill the fish.
What's the main reason for whales to just wash up ashore?
So when one of the animals beaches itself by accident, it's quite likely that the rest of the pod will follow to try and stay close to this individual. Another potential reason could be some sort of underwater interference that has resulted, that has negatively impacted their sonar that they use for navigation. So this could result in them beaching.
And then now we have certain theories coming up that there is a link between the fish dying in Muttur and whales washing up ashore in Trincomalee. Is there any link? Are we supposed to be worried about it?
I personally think that it's quite unlikely that there is a link between the two of them, and if there is a link, it's probably on a much larger scale, simply related to the cyclonic activities that we have had in the region, the general bad weather, which could have potentially affected these two. So it basically comes back to climate change as a whole.
It is also reported that there was seismic activity taking place in the seas of Indonesia. Could there be any possible link between these two incidents?
I personally think that it's highly improbable that there is any link between the seismic activities and the fish beaching.
We saw the United States pull out of the Paris Agreement. Now, what if Sri Lanka pulls out of this agreement? What kind of repercussions would it make?
Unfortunately, it would not be a positive thing at all, because climate change is fact. It is happening. There's no denying that whatsoever, and we are seeing on a daily event just the floods that have taken place in the last few weeks that could potentially be linked as well. So pulling out is certainly not something that we should consider at all, and I think we should be committing more towards combating climate change in this country.
And those were the views expressed by marine biologist Daniel Fernando. Moving on, Minister of Megapolis and Western Development Partali Champikaranawaka convened a media briefing today.
A large deal of harm was caused to the Southern Expressway. The ones who were boasting about the Southern Expressway have not implemented
Gamada V Squad.
The Gamada V Squad will begin in assisting cleanup operations in areas affected by flooding tomorrow.
The Gamada V Squad will commence its operations from Mulitiana Matra tomorrow. The objective of this movement is to renovate and clean the houses that were affected by the floods. Lanka Private Limited has come forward to renovate the damaged piping in the affected areas. Kevilton Electrical Products Private Limited will assist in renovating electrical systems that have failed and providing the necessary technical support, while PE Plus Private Limited will come on board the Gamada V Squad to clean drinking water wells in areas affected by the floods. Gamada is Sri Lanka's largest humanitarian development movement and is joined in its efforts this time by Uber, the world's largest transport provider. Uber will be providing discounted rides for all volunteers to the headquarters of the Capital Maharaja Organisation Limited, Colombo on Saturday and Sunday. How does this work? Open up your Uber app and enter the promo code Gamada. This will entitle you to one ride at a discounted rate. This promo is valid on Saturday 3rd June 2017 and Sunday 4th June 2017 between 3 a.m. to 5:30 a.m. only.
Would you like to help flood-affected families get back on their feet? Would you like to dedicate a few hours of your weekend helping them clean up their homes? Join the Newsfirst Gamada V Squad, a volunteer group of Sri Lankans who will travel to affected areas and serve. We leave at 5 a.m. on Saturday, 3rd June from the MTV head office, number 45/3, Braybrook Place, Colombo 2. Transport will be provided. All we need is you. Please register on our hotline at 011-4896-896 or connect with us on the Newsfirst.lk Facebook page. Location Mulitiana Matra on the 3rd June and Gaul on the 4th of June.
The World Food Programme and European Union provided aid to be distributed among the people who are affected by the adverse weather.
The country head of the World Food Programme provided aid material to the Minister of Disaster Management, Anura Priyadarshana, this morning. The aid included boats that could be used for rescue operations as well as solar panels for emergency power. The European Commission has decided to provide 300,000 euros or 51 million Sri Lankan rupees as relief aid to Sri Lanka. According to a release of the European Commission, the EU-funded assistance will focus on the most pressing needs of the affected families in the immediate aftermath of the floods. The Norway embassy says that the country will provide 10 million Norwegian kron or approximately 180 million Sri Lankan rupees as flood and landslide relief to Sri Lanka. According to the embassy, the funds are channeled through the UN and organizations that are already working to assist the affected areas.
Officers of the Salvation Army joined in the relief effort for victims made destitute by the floods and landslides. The relief work was initially hindered because of the Salvation Army property was also inundated by the floods. However, as floodwater subsided, relief operations went into full swing. The Salvation Army's Secretary for Business Administration in Sri Lanka, Captain Felix Kumarawel, said that truckloads of supplies dispatched from its headquarters in Colombo have been shared with survivors, and Salvation Army teams have been bolstered on the ground support. The Salvation Army's international headquarters has released funds to assist relief work.
Now, World Vision Lanka collaborated with the Sirasa Shakti TV1 Sahanayatra today to distribute dry rations to flood victims in the Galle district. Relief was distributed to nearly 300 families in the villages of Hakkapitiya, Potmulla, Madukata, Ambalagama, Batwangala and Batwangala West. The Nelua area in the Galle district was one of the most severely affected regions following the heavy rains that lashed the island over the past week.
Minister of Megapolis and Western Development Patale Champika Ranawaka convened a media briefing today.
A large deal of harm was caused to the Southern Expressway. The ones who were boasting about the Southern Expressway have not implemented it in the proper way, even though it was clearly mentioned in the environmental assessment reports. So we should rethink the construction of expressways in mountainous areas such as Kurunegala. The other problem is the drainage system in Colombo and Gampaha. With or without political intervention, huge houses were built in those areas, blocking the waterways. So we need a public movement to resolve this. If we want to save Colombo from a possible massive flood in the future, we will have to implement a system.
The minister spoke about the consequences of political intervention when taking policy decisions in the country.
When the subject minister was trying to construct a reservoir named Malwala above the Kalu river, he was chased away by the residents. Around 200 families who did not want to leave the area protested against this despite the parties they represent. But what has happened today? Thousands of people have been displaced in Ratnapura due to the floods. Water levels rose over 40 feet. The attempts made by the government to control the flood situation were stopped. If a rainfall exceeding 500 to 600 millimeters is experienced in Nuwara area, there is going to be a disastrous situation in estates. People living in those areas are given 6 perches each. They have started cultivating indoors, and now there is a great deal of erosion taking place. During the past 3 decades, nearly 1 meter of soil has eroded from the Nuwara area district.
You're watching Primetime News on News First.
We'll be back after this short commercial break. Stay tuned.
Would you like to help flood-affected families get back on their feet? Would you like to dedicate a few hours of your weekend helping them clean up their homes? Join the Newsfirst Ganmadda V Squad, a volunteer group of Sri Lankans who will travel to affected areas and serve. We leave at 5 a.m. on Saturday, 3rd June from the MTV head office, number 45.3 Braybrook Place, Colombo 2. Transport will be provided. All we need is you. Please register on our hotline at 011-4896-896 or connect with us on the Newsfirst.lk Facebook page. Location: Multiana Madara on the 3rd June and Galle on the 4th of June.
Welcome back to the news. Now, the Ceylon Petroleum Corporation has announced that the leak on the floating main pipeline carrying crude oil from the buoy at the Colombo port towards the mainland has now been completely repaired.
This buoy, located in the deep sea of the harbour, ruptured last night. The Ceylon Petroleum Corporation said that the flexing of the pipe in rough seas was the cause of the rupture, not an explosion during the unloading of the crude oil. The Marine Environment Protection Authority has taken steps to remove the layers of oil that have leaked into the sea following the rupture of the pipeline.
Weather also supported the activation of dispersant. Because of that, the oil did not reach our coast. The quantity of oil in that fuel line was calculated amounted to 70 tons, half of which already spilled, and it has not reached to the coast.
the crude oil pipeline that ruptures with the appointment of a new minister. Unloading of crude oil temporarily halted following a malfunction in the pipeline. Minister Anura Predarshanayapa. An explosion takes place in the outer buoy of the pipeline that carries crude oil from the Colombo harbour to the Sapugaskanda oil refinery. Minister Chandima Virakkodi. Once again, a rupture in the main pipeline. Unloading of crude oil halted. Minister Arjuna Ranatunga. Are these malfunctions that take place no sooner a new minister is appointed in charge of petroleum, a bid to purchase refined crude oil? Is there anyone who profits from such actions? To the new Minister of Petroleum Resources Development for your urgent attention.
Former senior DIG Anura Senanayake, who was remanded for over 1 year on allegations of concealing information pertaining to the murder investigation of Wasim Tajuddin, has been released on bail.
The Colombo High Court released the former senior DIG after considering the bail application submitted by him. Anura Senanayake was released on a cash bail of 1 million rupees and 3 sureties worth 5 million rupees each. The Colombo High Court judge ordered Anura Senanayake to appear before the Criminal Investigations Department every Sunday. He is barred from travelling overseas and ordered to hand in his passport to court. The judge informed Senanayake that bail will be rescinded if he attempts to influence the investigations or witnesses involved in the case. Anura Senanayake was remanded on the 23rd of May 2016 in connection to the murder of rugby player Wasim Tajuddin. The charred remains of Wasim Tajuddin was found in his car in Narahinpita on the 17th of May 2012. Suspicions have continuously surrounded the death of the late rugby player. However, it was not until 2015, when the new government came into power, that fresh investigations began and the body of Wasim Tajuddin was exhumed. A few months later, the Colombo Additional Magistrate determined that the cause of death was not the result of a motor accident. It was later revealed that the incident had been recorded on CCTV cameras in the area and the footage was submitted for further investigations. The traffic OIC of the Baralla police has been remanded until the 7th of this month on charges of stealing a multi-million rupee lightning conductor as well as gold jewellery worth over 550,000 rupees.
4 suspects, including the traffic OIC, surrendered to courts through an attorney today. The other 3 suspects were remanded until the 16th of this month. The Colombo Chief Magistrate ordered that the suspects be produced for an identification parade on the 7th of June. The robbery took place in a suburb of Colombo on the 20th of May.
The police headquarters announced the transfers of 12 DIGs and senior DIGs. The changes were made upon the recommendations of the Inspector General of Police and have been approved by the Police Commission. The transfers are with immediate effect.
Thereby, senior DIGs Jagat Gunawardena, YRW Vijay Gunawardena and KERL Fernando were transferred. DIGs P. Munasinghe, RL Kudituaku, SC Madhawatta, PPSM Dharmaratna, WK Jalat and KP Fernando were also transferred. The police headquarters also announced that DIGs Priyantha Jayakodi, IHKW Silva and MWCK Alhakon are also on the list of transferred officers. In addition, police media spokesperson Priyantha Jayakodi, who served as the DIG in charge of crimes and criminal investigations, has been transferred as the staff DIG of the IGP. DIG IHKW Silva, who functioned as the DIG in charge of the Anti-Narcotics Bureau, has been transferred as the DIG in charge of crimes and traffic.
When distributing drinking water to 360 families in Tangol today, the Minister of Housing and Construction Sajid Premadasa remarked on the generosity of the international community.
අපේ රට තුට්ටු දෙකකට ගණන් නොගත්ත රටවල්
Mighty nations that did not blink an eyelid when Sri Lanka was mentioned in the past today have lined up to provide us with aid following the devastating floods and landslides. If black flags were raised and opposition levelled against those nations, would we even receive a grain of rice to feed our flood victims? Therefore, as a country, when formulating our foreign policies, we need to be cautious and have a long-term vision and act in a manner that would not harm our motherland.
බොහොම දූරදර්ශී දුරදක්නා නුවණින් හිතලා බලලා අපේ විදේශ ප්‍රතිපත්තීන් අනුගමනය කරන්නට ඕන.
The Bar Association of Sri Lanka released a statement yesterday calling upon the IGP, the Attorney General and the government to take immediate action to arrest the increasing number of attacks against racial and religious minorities in the country.
The Bar Association of Sri Lanka calls on the state to act decisively against all parties who advocate hatred that constitute incitement to discrimination, hostility and violence. The statement, signed by its president U.R. De Silva, goes on to say, the Bar Association of Sri Lanka unequivocally condemns all incidents of hate speech and incitement of violence against racial and religious communities in Sri Lanka.
It is our duty as the Bar Association that we should inform the public about the existing law about these incidents. That is where Article 12 of the Constitution guarantees to every person equality before law. So, with that in mind, we have informed the Chapter 15 of the Penal Code, and in that Penal Code, 291A and 291B is there with regard to these type of incidents. And the other important law is ICCPR Act.
The ambassador of the European Union to Sri Lanka and the heads of missions of Australia, Canada, the Netherlands, Norway, South Africa and Switzerland, along with other diplomatic representatives, arrived at the Devatagaha Mosque yesterday. Leader of the National Unity Alliance, Asad Sali, and other Muslim representatives were present at the mosque to accept the diplomat. The discussion that followed focused on the acts of violence that are reportedly being carried out against the minority communities in the country.
Express our solidarity to the Muslim community, in particular now with the Ramadan. We know that it's not easy for this community to go through the difficult days. They are long days where you are thirsty. So we hope that you will refrain also from entering into that cycle. We feel that, on the contrary, all the religious communities should be in favor of tolerance and not only avoid but condemn hatred speeches.
It is equally important that the rule of law be applied for those who perpetrate acts of hate and these crimes. And it is equally important that minority rights and the rights of freedom of religion be upheld. The Government of Canada condemns all acts of hate. Sri Lanka is a stronger and richer country for its diversity of its people. And so acts of hate against one community should and must be condemned by all communities.
From an Australian perspective, we utterly condemn, the Australian government utterly condemns acts of hate, violent acts, hate speech and the like. And clearly there have been many instances of these acts of hate in Sri Lanka over recent weeks, directed unacceptably at the Muslim community. It is a pivotal time in the history of this country. It is incumbent on all communities to act in good faith and in good spirit towards each other in the greater national interests.
One of the things that we find difficult to understand is that at the core of the value of all of the religions in Sri Lanka stands messages that speaks to peace. And so our message to you is very, very simple from South Africa. Sri Lanka is enjoying a period of relative peace and stability. We are concerned that these acts of violence is going to roll back that peace process. We are concerned about the fact that if this continues, then the fragile peace that the Government of National Unity has been able to forge is going to be in danger.
You know, Sri Lanka in this current phase of reconciliation can do without the recent attacks on the mosques and businesses. And I'm aware that at the highest government levels these incidents are not condoned. But my presence here is an expression of solidarity and to underline the need for the upholding of rule of law and for prompt action to ensure that the perpetrators of violence are dealt with according to the law.
If I look at the current agenda, the reform agenda in Sri Lanka, I think all the religious community can also contribute in every field of this reform agenda. Constitutional reform, the interreligious dialogue, the economic reform, and reconciliation.
And I must commend your community, the Muslims, to actually have chosen a non-violent response to all the challenges you've been met with. It's unfortunate and a tragedy that these incidents have come back now, the last month, to a larger degree. And this is not where the new government or Sri Lanka should go. This is going the wrong path.
We have had a number of unpleasant memories from a ruthless 30-year war. We lost a number of lives. Even before we forget these unpleasant memories, a group of people are trying to create racial issues and extreme religious disharmony in the country. We have to condemn these religious extremism. Be it Muslim extremism, be it Buddhist extremism, we should condemn it.
Well, that's a wrap of this edition of Primetime News.
Take care and good night.